tell me what you need.
And I really don't have any structure to this kind of thing. I just like to talk
Cool,
to
love
people.
it. Yep,
Um,
cool, love it. Same.
I really appreciate you reaching out on Facebook. That's you didn't have to do that. And I appreciate you giving me the time. I did not know that I was messaging you at 3 a.m. in the morning, your time.
Yeah, it was just so, it's funny. It was me. I wasn't like, it's 3 a.m. here. I was like, oh, it's 3. I just randomly woke up and I was like, it's 3 a.m. now. How about we do it in 5 hours? And then that's like the best time to do it. But I don't usually wake up at 3 a.m. I must have had, you know how you get like the excitement when you've got something coming the next day? That was it.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear that you were excited. Glad I
Really?
got lucky enough for you to be compelled to answer my message at that time.
Yeah, and that Facebook page, I feel is really handy. That need a guest, because is that where you posted?
Yeah, it is, and it's a little overwhelming. I don't stay on there too regularly, but it had been a few weeks since I recorded, and I was feeling, like I ought to kick things back up and get going again. So I reached out, and I got hit with like 15 people right away wanting to come on. I was like, oh, this is cool, but that's enough.
There's so much involved in it. Because I've got a podcast as well, and I know there's so much involved in it that you're like, holy shit, 15 podcasts I now have to deal with. Like,
right. It's exciting, but it's also daunting.
Yeah, I feel you. That's good.
Yeah.
And have you had them all on?
No, not yet. You're the first of the bunch, so this is episode 3 in total of the podcast, but you're the first from the group there.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. I love that. And how's it been going so far?
It's okay. It's been inconsistent. I did the first 2 episodes. I am new to the production side of things. I had a podcast in the past with a friend of mine, and he did most of that, editing and audio work and all that. And I just kind of showed up and talked, and it was nice that way. But that eventually went to the wayside when I moved out of California, and I got the itch to start one again. And I was curious and wanted to learn all that stuff, so just kind of jumped in and started it. But then I started working full time, and it got a little harder to keep it going.
Yeah, I feel like people just don't, if you don't have a podcast, you don't quite understand what is into it. And I have been lucky. I've been paying for it, the production I had 30 episodes, and I've been paying for the production, and then I've just switched over because I wanted something more cost effective. And I did one myself, and I'm like, because I used to have a podcast similar to yourself where I did the production just on GarageBand, and I was like, I'm not doing that again. There's so much involved because you had to, cut. I try not to edit like too much out anyway, but yeah, I feel you.
Yeah, I mean, it's all, it's a journey, and makes me feel like I'm progressing in life.
Yeah, exactly. What made you start it?
I got to have something creative going, otherwise my soul starts to feel like it's not there.
Yeah, slowly.
Tell me a little bit more about your podcast. I listened to a bit of an episode just because I wanted to kind of hear, your personality and your voice, and make sure I'd be able to contend and all that. But yeah, I'd like to hear.
Contend. Oh, bless. No. Yeah, I'm not like a super professional podcaster or anything. Well, like we all are, aren't we? Yes.
Yeah,
we're very professional.
I mean, I talk to myself in my car, so it's pretty much just that.
So nailing it pretty much. Yeah. But so no, I started the podcast. I had a podcast, like we were saying previously, called The Talking Stick, where I was discussing all things taboo and giving everybody an opportunity. I felt like conversation had become this exclusive thing where unless you know everything about that thing, then they're like, you're not an expert, so you don't get to talk about it. Whereas I believe that we only learn by having conversations about things that we don't know about and by asking questions. So I like talking about race, religion, money, sex, drugs, rock and roll, all that kind of thing. And I had a hiatus similar to yourself. I went and worked up, there's a thing called FIFO in Western Australia. So it's like mining. So I'm not sure there's definitely mining all over the world in like Canada and everywhere and stuff. But here you go up and you spend 2 weeks away from family and friends. You're on this like village. And there was a few things going on up there. It's really challenging. It's one of the most challenging like jobs definitely that I've ever done. And the culture is really questionable. It's definitely getting better. But when it came to harassment, sexual harassment and things like that, and just this bro kind of culture, it was really toxic. And I think I could tell that it was like, there were so many conversations that weren't happening. And I'm definitely guilty of, sometimes skipping out on conversations, but I trust that that's maybe what I'm here for, is to have hard conversations because they don't make me feel uncomfortable. I can talk and I'll share about anything if I know it's going to help someone. So I started the Resource podcast talking about workplace culture, harassment, assault and abuse of all things, because I think at the basis of a lot of people's journey, whether it's their own, and trigger warning, like for guests or for people listening, is that at the basis of a lot of people's insecurities are trauma, and whether that's happened to themselves or parents or ancestral kind of trauma. I believe that we're not talking about that stuff, and it's been kind of pushed down. And I'm like, no, we're not pushing that down anymore. We're going to be talking about that. And then funnily enough, there's so many podcasts and so many things popping up where obviously that's a collective understanding, is that we're not having hard conversations and people are steering away from difficulty. So I've been lucky enough to have over here some of the really poignant people who are advocates in that space. And then I've now started a company where we go into companies, corporations, corporate, to have respectful behaviour conversations around sexual harassment, workplace culture, discrimination, bullying, mental health, and all that kind of jazz, just to open up the taboo conversations. And that's my jam.
That is awesome. Holy crap.
Yeah.
So much of what you just rattled off there resonated with me. I'm quite familiar with toxic workplace culture, and I'm kind of newly, as of this year, starting my, I don't know how I would put this, my mental health, addressing my mental health, starting that whole journey, and doing therapy for the first time in my life, and trying to do a lot of these different things that I just always thought were not for me, or showing weakness or whatever. However many different thoughts ran through my head about all that. Yeah, that's huge, and I think there is a big need for it. And I'm trying to think of, I mean, I'm working at a place right now where it's like a shop type of environment, and a lot of men, a lot of all that. And I had been working from home for the past year, so I had kind of forgotten what it was like to be in that space. I was just around my wife and kids for for a year.
It's actually crazy stepping back into it, isn't it?
It's so different, and I have such a different perspective on it. And yeah, it's, I don't know. I don't want to get too much.
So how's it been? What I love having the conversation with, because what I was having the conversation with a lot of survivors and people who had been sexually assaulted or harassed or within the workplace and things like that. And in a workplace specifically, a lot of the time that was over here, women who were experiencing that. But then when it came to abuse as younger, that seemed to be like pretty 50-50, like it doesn't discriminate with that kind of thing. And it didn't discriminate. It was all over. That was conversation was being had with people. And it's difficult. I've never been a man, so I would have no idea what it's like to deal with that we're all dealing with on the other end of the scale, the way that men have had to be brought up in. When it comes to masculinity, you're not allowed to talk about things. You have to show up and bro up, and what was your experience growing up? I'm so intrigued in what the messaging was when you were growing up, like as a young man. Was it, you know, don't cry, don't show weakness?
Um, no, I don't want to say that. You know, I actually cried a bunch as a little kid. If I'm being honest, I was a little you know, I had a short fuse in that regard. No, my parents were really sensitive and all that, but they were just you know, hardworking individuals, and they just didn't have time to talk about that kind of stuff. So it was really just kind of like get over it mentality. And then my dad was big on just like being tough, not in like forcing me to be tough, but that was just kind of like a pride point in his life, you know, as like a hardworking person. You know, we'd do a lot of tough guy things. We'd go hunting and work on the house and all this stuff, and you know, put like electrical tape on his wounds and weird stuff like that. You know what I mean? So that's
Yeah.
that's where I'm coming from. And it wasn't ever like mental health or, you know, therapy or anything was a you know, it was more like it's in your head kind of thing. It's like, oh, that's not a real thing or whatever. It's
Mm.
kind of the sentiment that I got. And yeah, I rode with that for most of my young adult life, like just kind of trying to think my way out of, you know, certain feelings and stuff like that. And it just finally got to a point where it was like, this is affecting my life too much now. It's obviously something, and I need a third party other than my wife to come in here and help me make sense of all this.
Yeah, that's
it's
good. Well
yeah.
done.
Hey, thank you. It's helped. You know, I feel like I still got a long way to go, but it's nice to just know that there's a path. You know, and there's some.
Nice to have someone else to talk to, like you were saying, like your wife. You and your wife. Do you have kids?
I do.
Yeah. So, like, you and your wife are holding down a fort for children, and then you're trying to hold down a fort for yourself, and then you're trying to hold down a fort for the relationship. Like, it's sometimes we're not equipped, unless you're an actual psychologist or a counselor, we're not necessarily equipped to understand how we're feeling sometimes. So you need an outside source just to chat to. Like, it's like, I just
Yeah.
need somebody to talk through what's going down so that I'm like, am I going crazy or is this normal? Yeah.
Yeah, I think too when you're in a relationship, there's like an unspoken, like you don't want to just complain all the time, and you don't want to like dump all these irrational feelings on someone and have them feel like they need to deal with that. So yeah, if you could just pay somebody about it to sit there and
Yeah.
let you.
They're paid to listen to you, and you're like, but I've seen a few like memes of like, it's like having a best friend who is not allowed to talk about themselves and they only have to talk about you.
Yeah.
Perfect.
That was like the hardest thing for me to get used to, is like not to ask them like how they're doing and what's going on. They'd be like, how's it going?
So,
And I'd be like, oh, fine.
like,
How are you? Like, what'd you do this weekend?
like, you're dealing with a lot. How are you going?
Right. It's just like, I don't know. It's a dance. I'm learning, but yeah, it's all been very interesting. So with the workplace um issues, like how do you approach a conversation about just like general shifting of a culture? Because I mean, every place I've ever been in professionally is kind of like got its host of issues, you know what I mean? Kind of top down thing. And like, where do you even start?
Well, this is the thing, is like everywhere's different, like every person, every workplace is different. And exactly like you were saying, there's there is an embedded culture whenever you go somewhere. So first you have to have somebody reach out to you who's acknowledged that they need help with culture, or they need help maintaining a good culture, or they need help working around a few key kind of components with it.
Hmm.
I think the starting point is hiring, and then sometimes people will be trapped in this mentality where they're hiring so people will fit into their culture, but their culture's not that great. So first point of call is like understanding your hiring process. What are you hiring for? What culture are you trying to get them to fit into? Are you expanding and growing your culture, or are you just perpetuating a pretty not toxic culture, but not a culture that you want to maintain? Mm-hmm. And then I think the hardest thing as well with culture is it reflects culture within a workplace generally reflects the world, right? Like FIFO was a petri dish, or FIFO and mining was a petri dish of the world. So there is sometimes harassment in the workplace. There's sometimes exceptional people in the workplace. There's people who play their part really well, and there's people who are just trying to find their way. So every workplace is different, like every person in the world is different, like every culture is different. And then having that conversation that, again, not just workplace culture, but cultures are different. So depending on where people have come from, depending on their upbringing, changes what's acceptable to them and what's not acceptable to them. So, in some religion, in some cultures, speaking to women is unacceptable, or like having a diverse workforce with women in some cultures is like, no, because they're not allowed to be involved. And while I don't agree with that being okay, because we're in 2023, we need to grow and change. And I understand that that's been culture for a long time, and I understand that that's been a religion for a long time. Unfortunately, like the rest of the world, we all have to grow and change. So that's going to be even harder in an environment where it's not just creating diversity in the workplace when it comes to men and women, or able-bodied people, or different skin colors, or abilities and things like that. For some people, literally conversing with a woman and respecting a woman's point of view is a huge step compared to, like, in Australia, diversity is going to be a lot easier than in other places, because it's embedded religion and culture within that. So there's so much involved. And what I've learned in the process is that I think when I first started, I was like, I know exactly what's needed. I'm coming in. I think what's needed is we need to have this conversation, we need to talk about it, which is all fine and great and dandy. But the question that I think I was missing when I first started was, where are you at? What do you need help with? Where do you see the issues are, and what's been a common denominator? And if they aren't in that point where they can understand that, we have a few kind of tools. So we do some archetype profiling to understand what kind of people you have in your workplace. And everybody has personality types. I don't know if you've done a personality test. It's similar, but it's like an archetype profiling where there's like a sovereign, a king kind of type, somebody who's like a CEO, a sage who's really organized like an accountant, a jester who wants to see the light in all the situations, a lover who is people-oriented, wants to look after their people, and a mystic, so somebody who's creative, who's the thought leader and isn't necessarily great at actioning those things. So that would be more of somebody in the sage. But yeah, right. Same. So like, of those things, are you like going, yeah, I'm a jester, I'm definitely like mystic, I'm definitely like a lover? I feel like that was myself. Are there any that you're like, yeah, that's me? All of those.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I was trying to pick one as you were rattling them off. I was like, oh, maybe not. Okay.
Yeah. Well, and what I've been learning and going through this process is that we all want to be all of those things, but sometimes where our strengths are in different parts of those. And every person and every personality has a place in a work environment, in your life, in the culture that is created by society. So it's not about labeling people and saying you are bad for having this. Everybody, there's a necessity to have each person. So first we kind of go through that process. Then we have a conversation about what's appropriate, what isn't appropriate when it comes to laws, legislations, and things where there are actually rules and legislations and laws in place, instead of me coming going, no, that's wrong, that's wrong. And what I found as well is people don't want to be told what to do or what not. They want to be, it needs to be a conversation. You need to kind of go up and listen to people, and be like, what is it that you feel like the gaps are for yourself? What is it that you find is that you're seeing in the environment? Maybe you're not partaking in that, but you want to be somebody who's an upstander and a bystander to create a safer place for yourself and everybody here. And the main reason why I wanted to do it as well is because I had been, trigger warning again, I had been sexually assaulted as a teenage girl, and I started sharing, going back, I was running women's events called Quit Your Bitching, which was about being kind to yourself and kind to other people. I was really lucky to be brought up in a body positive household, and so I never had body image issues. But I found as I was growing up that obviously like 98% of people around me, mainly women I was seeing, but then obviously more so now men who are feeling, I think, a bit unseen when it comes to body image, is that it was this working against each other, the bitchiness with each other, and instead of lifting each other up and creating this strength with each other, it was beating each other down. And like you were saying before, while your parents were really kind and while they were a little bit more switched on, society and messaging in adverts, in movies, in sitcoms that we'd watch was that you're broken and that you need to be this is the way you do things. So we all learnt. You'd learn things from watching things. Your parents could be very forward thinking, or the people around you could be very forward thinking. But then with what we're consuming, and assuming you and I are around a similar age group, we're definitely not in our teens, is that we would watch, and we were brought up in porn culture where it was pornography, where you would learn how to interact with the opposite sex.
Sure.
If you were lucky, you had sex education at school where it talked about, putting a condom on a banana, but it didn't show you, I don't know if that was the same for you guys, but it didn't show you how to interact sensually and consensually and communicating your boundaries with the opposite sex or with people around you. It was literally, for myself, it was like, shut up, don't be abrasive, like don't ask questions, don't my family and my mum would say make sure you ask questions, but definitely society we grew up in wasn't a safe place to show your boundaries. And when I had my experience as a teenager, it wasn't violent, it wasn't in a back alley somewhere, it was in a bedroom with somebody I knew, and I'd asked it not to happen, and I felt like it was my own fault for putting myself in that situation, and I never said anything. And then so when I started doing these events, Quit Your Bitching, which was around body image, I shared at one of these events that I'd had that experience, and I had 50 women in that room, and 98% of the women in that room shared with me that they'd had a similar experience. And that blew my mind. I was sharing because I wanted to help. I knew that I would maybe potentially be through, sharing my voice, I would be helping one or two people. I did not anticipate that 98% of women in that room had that experience. And then so the more I spoke about it, the more I spoke about my experiences, I realized that it wasn't just 98% of the, people in that room. It was in society. A lot of people, if not all people, have had an experience that's changed them in that capacity, where it's shut them down, it's made you question yourself, made you question, yourself, your intuition of saying that something is, you don't want something to happen. And the boundaries and consent, which is also what we teach when we go in. And that's what's really important to me when I'm speaking, is talking about boundaries and consent, and that you can say no. And if somebody else is making you feel awkward, you can make them feel awkward as shit as well if they that's on you, that's your shit. So and the boundaries thing is really exciting for me, because all of this stuff and what we create, in essence, in a podcast, in a work, and things that we're creating are things that we wish we had. And I wish that I had been in an environment where it was acceptable to have boundaries and not be looked at as a crazy person or a bitch, or, from a men's point of view, as somebody who's angry or we were able to just show up how with what we liked and what we didn't like. And then really passionate about on the side, it's each of us showing up in our sensuality and sexuality and being whoever you want to be, like you're Ben, I'm Becky. I'm not heterosexual, bisexual, polyamorous, or anything like that. We are literally just interested in what we're interested in, and it doesn't need labels. And I think that a lot of the time when it comes to sexual harassment, sexual assault, sexual abuse is the darkness that people have felt from being their self. So these things show up in places that they potentially shouldn't, and they've been kind of shut down for being who they are and shamed and guilted into feeling a certain way about who they are. So that's like all of the things.
Whoa. Yeah, that's a lot.
They're like,
Yeah, I'm like, where do I go from there?
Yes.
Checking everything. I know it's very important stuff. I can see easily how a person gets into a precarious situation like that. I think the one thing I was lucky enough to do in my own life was, at least in the beginning, was to only interact with people in that way that I had a long-term relationship with. It wasn't like ever on a whim or anything like that. So there was never any question that there was respect there and all that. But obviously, everybody goes down different paths and has different things going on. So yeah, it's, I guess, a very big need for what you're doing. So.
And it's so different as well. Like I've been to America. I came to America and did Camp America. I was a photographer in Ramapo, day camp. So upstate New York. Had a great time. It's hectic. You work like 24/7 pretty much. But so obviously, yeah, like being in America, it's completely different to being in Australia, and then going to Asian countries, it's completely different compared to going to the UK. So like, it's just, I find it, I love people, and it's probably interesting why you're a podcaster, why I'm a podcaster as well, is you just love people. We're so complex and interesting. And I think a lot of the time people who aren't as open-minded aren't as people-oriented, and they're consumed about how they have experiencing life, whereas we all experience things so differently.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I've felt in my own life, my own perception shift, and process things vastly different than I had just maybe even the week before or whatever. When I started going down this journey with the whole mental health thing and, medications and things of that nature, it was crazy to see how just like a few different little chemical switches were flipped and all of a sudden you think completely different. You think you are who you are, and sometimes there are other circumstances at play that make you different. um
100%. Has it changed? Like, how is, I know that definitely friends in my life, when kids have come along while you wouldn't change anything. Like being a parent is challenging as well, because your identity changes and switches from what you were. I know for mothers, we have a 9-month gestation period where we're very aware that our body's changing and things are changing. But I've heard for obviously men, you go through that change with your partner and their body's changing, but there's nothing specifically or necessarily changing in your body. So I think it's challenging for both parts. I think for men as well, sometimes you're like, whoa, you're just catapulted into being Ben, and then all of a sudden you're dad, and you have to do all of this. Did it change for you? Do you remember like being okay and then not being okay?
Well, what do you mean exactly? Just like just having dramatic mood shifts, or what do you mean? Or just when my daughter was born, or?
Not even when you do it. I suppose it's like I related it to being a parent, but like when it comes to mental health, was it like a slow, gradual process, or do you reckon it was like, was there something that was like a catalyst for it?
I think it's just the inability to take time to process things and just kind of keeping everything inside it'd be like a cycle. It would be, I would just push harder and harder and harder, trying to keep things together, trying to address symptoms. And then eventually there was a blowing point, and then there would be some kind of external event that would get people in my life's attention, and I'd feel guilty about that. And then the cycle restarts, first I push down that guilt and then I push down the next thing and blah, blah, blah. So it wasn't that there was like a back and forth or anything like that, or it was like many events, many cycles playing through. And I think that's when I realized that was happening. I guess that was the moment, when I was like, man, I've been here so many times. Why does this keep happening? You know what I mean?
I'm here again.
Yeah. And it's always, you always think something else is going to fix it, like, oh, better job, or this person, or having kids or whatever is going to make you turn into a different human. And that's not the case. No matter what, if you're not addressing things yourself for yourself, it stays the same.
100%. I think that's what meditation changed it for me, in journaling, because when I was growing up, I thought that I was bloody crazy, because I had a lot of mental health around me, like people who were struggling. So I think sometimes I just thought that was normal. And my brain, when it comes to, like, my brain works so fast, it's like, and so, like, I found meditation. So I meditate in the morning, at night, and I journal. And I think from when I started journaling, it was like an opportunity to get all the shit that was in my brain down on paper, or like out of my brain, so that I could have my brain back. And it's similar to like going and speaking to someone, because you're getting it out instead of going over it in your, like, by yourself the whole time. So meditation and journaling helped me, because it was like an outlet that I could do, and it was free, even when I wasn't doing well financially, or revenue wasn't coming in, or something was going on. But then also, that's something that you have to be self-disciplined with, or not disciplined. You have to make it become a habit. And when you're not doing well in your brain feels broken, like, the last thing that you're going to do is like get into some new habits. Like, I'm going through depression, I feel really shit, like I'm on the brink of potentially not being here tomorrow. Why don't I do this for myself? It's not going to happen. It's like it's like a what's the word, a prevention and a preemptive kind of tool that I've put in place, knowing that I'm predisposed to feeling unwell sometimes. And going to the gym as well has helped me, working out.
Yeah, I agree with both of those things. I haven't practiced meditation in some time, but there was a period of time where I was pretty disciplined with it, and I was extremely surprised to how effective it was to ground me. I'd just hop on YouTube and listen to like a 10-minute, whatever, go through the prompts. And it took a week or so to kind of get the hang of it, because there is this technique to it, and it's really surprisingly challenging to try and stay focused on the thing at hand here, and not let your mind go off into your taxes and work and all the whatever else is going.
I just let myself now. I feel like sometimes I'm like, am I actually a Buddha? Like, I'm doing this really well. And then other times I'm like, do. Like, I can't sit still for the life of me. Nothing's changed in who I am, maybe the food that I've eaten or something like that. But I find sometimes I'm like, I've got this meditation thing down packed. I'm so good. I could probably teach it to people. And then other times I'm like, I need it to be guided. I need to be told exactly what to do. I need a meditation that, like, every minute on the minute it goes, and bringing yourself back if those thoughts are taking you out there. Like, I find I'm so different. And that self-forgiveness of myself, of going, I'm not going to be great at everything all of the time, but even just sitting there and breathing and putting time aside to listen, I find I'm far more gentle with myself, I think, through having done it for years and acknowledging that you go through ebbs and flows where you're good at it and other times you're not. And sometimes I feel like breathing for 1 minute in and out is as good as sitting there for a half an hour meditation or like an hour long breath work.
Mm-hmm.
It's giving yourself that time. And I think people put so much pressure on what meditation has to be, whereas it's just giving yourself time and going, hey, I love you and you deserve this. I'm going to sit and we're going to breathe and just close our eyes for a little minute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I agree with that. And the gym also, you mentioned that just a second ago. That's been the one thing that I have been steadfast about, and I've acknowledged that that is probably the most important thing I do for my mental health, as well as physical health. But there's nothing I've been able to, nothing I got a greater result from than just putting on loud music and lifting weights for an hour and a half or something. You know what I mean? It puts me in a state where I feel like my brain is fully activated and nobody's talking to me and I'm not doing anything except counting and breathing, and it and processing and thinking. And it's been huge for me. It's the hard part about the gym for me is taking breaks from it, because I feel like out of sorts if I don't go to the gym in the morning and I have to endure one of those days.
Yeah, you're like, oh, well, I get my when I'm on my flow. I don't know if this is a podcast. I'm all about talking about it all the time. If when, like there's a chick over here called Lucy Peaches. She's called the period queen, and she helps people understand this chart of there's 7, 7, 14, 21. No, it must be 5, 10. Yeah, 7, 14, 21, 28. So 7-day cycles where our hormones go like this, and then there's nothing. And before I understood that, I was like, am I freaking nuts? Like, why am I feel weaker today. Like, why can't I lift this shit? Whereas I was hitting PBs like literally a week and a half ago. And there's an English guy called James Smith and a guy called Ben Carpenter and Lucy Peaches, who I find they're all really great people to follow. If you're a man or a woman or however you identify, if you've got somebody in your life who goes through a cycle, we all do, but we're definitely cyclical. And I'd be like, why can't I freaking lift? Or why did I love the gym? And I was like, the gym is amazing for the last 2 weeks. And then this week I'm like, nah, shit, I don't want to go. I don't want to go there. I want to sit at home. I don't want to look at anyone. I don't want anyone to look at me. And it made sense to me going into understanding my cycle and things like that. So yeah, the gym is super my mental health release. Then understanding myself and how my body works in a cyclical kind of manner so I was a PT before doing what I'm doing now and a photographer for 15 years previous to that. And it helped me as well when I was training other people, because I was like, did you know this actually, it changes throughout your month. I'll send it to you. It's really, really cool information. I'm going to have her on my podcast, so I'll send you once I've had that. But Ben Carpenter, I find he's really good. We were speaking before about body image and body positivity for women has become really great and a really big and expansive conversation, but for men it hasn't. And I think I'm not a man, and I don't experience life living in a man's body, but now there's so much more pressure on men to have a six-pack, to have this and have that, and diet culture is infiltrating young men as much as young women. And I think that Ben Carpenter does a really great job in speaking to diet culture and body image. So yeah, he's a really good person to follow. I love having that conversation because we're like anything, none of us are exempt.
Right. I'm going to write down Ben Carpenter.
I'll send you some stuff. So this is what's happened now then is because we're doing this podcast, we're going to be friends now. And I was going to shit.
That's great.
I mean, be that person who just sends you all these memes and like, oh my God, check this out.
No, that's awesome because part of this journey for me that I don't talk about is that I don't really I don't really have any friends outside of podcasting and work. So this is like my social outlet, and hopefully I can
Awesome.
collect a few of them.
Yeah, cool. Love that. I'm happy to take it.
Yeah, thank you. Dude, where do we go from here? I kind of wanted to go back just for a quick second with the workplace culture thing. Is there a particular industry that you dealt with more than others and that had issues?
Well, it seems so. Male-dominated industries, I find, because I'm willing to have a conversation, and I find it really important that I'm compassionate and empathetic and understanding that everybody, while they may have taken part in things in their past, that once we know better, we do better. So male-dominated industries, making sure that I am entering those industries with compassion and understanding and not finger pointing and going in and saying, in a victim mentality of going, I experienced, if I'm really honest, I went up there and I was what I would call myself as a lived experience sexual harassment and assault speaker. And so I would go and share my story, because what was happening in conversation and also within our society here was that sometimes guys would go, oh, I've never seen it. That's bullshit. You're making it up. And also the justice system, which isn't that just, would be very geared towards, it would be very victim blaming. And it would say, well, you shouldn't have been there. You shouldn't have been doing this. And it wasn't geared towards understanding for people who haven't had those experiences. So in male-dominated industries where it has been, you've not seen it as much, to help people understand that while you don't see it and while you may not have experienced it yourself, it is happening. We're not asking the question of whether it's happening. We're saying it definitely is happening and we need your help, because men are the ones who are able to help, because it's true. Hashtag not all men, but it's not all men. But it has to be a conversation that while you're not seeing it, you have the ability to speak with your mates and have those conversations and stand in if you see something, and the standard that you walk past is a standard that you accept. So it's been predominantly male-dominated industries, but I also really enjoy all kind of when it comes to bullying, that's a whole different conversation, because bullying, have you seen two women go at each other? Like, that's freaking nuts. Like, women and bullying is hectic, and that's a gendered kind of thing. While there is bullying when it comes to men as well, that's a gendered between women, I find myself and the experiences that I've had in workplaces, like, bitches be cray, like, honestly, the I've seen some people do. And then being in high school, I was the person who was friends with everybody. But I was there sometimes when people were trying to start rumors about other people. And I was like, no, that is not true. Like, what? I just didn't understand that. I think I'm a kind person, so I don't understand when people aren't being kind. It blows my mind when people don't want to be good. Mm-hmm. And it comes from insecurities. So when it comes to bullying, more so it would be, education departments and things like that. But it's essentially all places, it's medium-sized businesses that need help when it comes to people who are guidance in having a conversation. And so originally we were going for male-dominated industries, mining, defence, and all those kind of things, and sport. But now it tends to be we're in all, and the conversation is different, and the conversation is at different levels, depends on where you go in. When it comes to sporting teams, for example, we will have the conversation around consent and boundaries and understanding consent. But also I think sporting teams, their culture is really clear. You can tell if a sporting club doesn't have a great culture because how they show up and the games that they're winning and how they work well with each other. They have to work well within a team. And then how they treat the opposite sex is really important as well. So they don't necessarily need help with culture. They're probably pretty good with it, unless they do, and then we'll go in and have that conversations. But a lot of the times they'll need help when it comes to consent, boundaries, and having that. So it depends.
Okay. That was pretty comprehensive. You're such a talented speaker, by the way. You make my job really easy.
Oh no, it's fun. Do you know what? I'm practicing everything, so I've just been practicing, and that's what the podcast has done for me, and it will do for you as well. Is you get to practice speaking, and that's like literally before I would shit my pants if I had to go up and speak. I would lose my train of thought. I would worry what people thought. So it's literally through practicing the craft and practicing speaking that I've gotten better. So I absolutely received that compliment because it wasn't the case the whole time, and it's really nice. I feel like as a podcaster, a part of speaking is listening. And this is what I found when I go out and do a keynote or when I'm doing a workshop. I will speak at the workshop, but then what I have to master is hearing and listening without speaking other people's journey, because you've invoked something in them. So being a speaker, you actually have to be good at listening. So you're doing a bang up job there.
Hey, thank you. Received. Yeah. You've mentioned a few times that you've had several careers, very, very diverse background. Is there a reason that you pulled out of photography after 15 years and then chose to do these different things? Are they in response to anything, or just got bored?
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely a reflection of my personality, I think, and also my upbringing. So Mum and Dad were really open to, while there was it was a shitstorm when we were growing up when it came to mental health. The understanding was we'd go to hippie gatherings and my name was Rainbow. There would be, like a lot of nudity, not in a sexual way. And it was very progressive place and environment that I grew up in. But it was, we want you to do what you love. And, oh, well done. You've done, even being with my dad now, he loves me on this journey. He celebrates this journey. And so I feel really supported. But so I became a photographer because I was good at that. I struggled with school. I was like squirrel, couldn't learn. I found it really challenging. And when you find school challenging, when we were younger and in school it wasn't progressive learning, I felt stupid all the time. I just felt like a stupid dipshit because I couldn't learn. And so with photography, and then I started doing other things in school. I didn't necessarily drink or take drugs until I was older. It was definitely, a path that I went down later. But school, I would just wag and what is it called, wagging? What would you guys say when you skip a period at school?
Just cut class, something like that.
Cut class. So I'd just be like, see ya, not doing this. But photography I really enjoyed and I was good at it and I got awards in photography. And looking back at my photography, I wasn't that good. Definitely as well, something that I just got better at and because I enjoyed it. So I was like, I'm going to be a world-class photographer and I want to be a photojournalist. And that's actually why I went to America. I thought I was going to go and work for the New York Times. And I was really passionate about that. And after doing it probably for about 12 years, I was lucky enough to do it in different capacities. I was a photojournalist for a local paper down here. So Western Australia is a massive state in Australia, and the southwest of that state it's really beautiful and it's got a lot of things. So there's wine, there's sport, there's the coast where there's the surfing, there's Ironman that comes down here, and we also get a lot of music festivals, and there's a lot of really expansive people that come from the area who go on to do great things. So I was really busy all the time, but got to do some epic things, got to meet presidents of countries
Oh, wow.
because they would come down there. I'd get to meet, famous surfers, and I'd get to meet actors because we have a thing called Cinefest Oz. So it was shaping me to be comfortable, because I would get 10 minutes with somebody, sometimes 2 minutes with somebody to get a front page worthy picture. So what that was creating in me doing that job was quickly creating magic and getting to know somebody really fast, and also not being starstruck. Like, you can't meet the president of a country, try to get a good photo of them while being like, oh my God, you've done so many amazing things. You got to get your shit together, push that aside, treat them as human beings, which is what everybody is. So it gave me the ability to treat everybody as human, and that nobody is better than anybody else. And I was brought up in that capacity anyway. You treat the cleaner the same way you treat the president of a country, the same, with respect. Everybody deserves that. And so that shaped me in that capacity. And I was doing photography, like we were saying, for 15 years. And I would also, unfortunately, have to attend the shitty stuff that went on, the spot news. So in that area, there was a lot of sharks. And in the first 2 weeks that I started, or the first couple of months, there was a spate of, 3 shark attacks. And over the course of the years that I worked at the paper there were 7 shark attacks that ended up being fatalities. And I'd have to attend them. I would take photos of people in their most horrendous moments. And as a photojournalist, I have compassion for there's a fellow who I was lucky enough to have as a teacher called Dave Dare Parker, who's a war photographer. And I have so much love and compassion because real photojournalists get so much shit. They get looked at like crap, but they brought to us, back before there was social media, back before everything was like quick to us, they put their life on the line. They risked everything to get photos of the shit that was going on in the world, to bring it back so that we could see how the challenges that other people were facing. And when it came to being an advocate, that was the conduit of people being able to see what was happening in war-torn countries. So I have so much love and compassion. But I think in the moment when I was attending these shark attacks, I realized that wasn't me. I have so much love and compassion for people that I couldn't, watch what's the bird called? A vulture, about to eat a child. I couldn't watch that. That's a famous photo. I don't know if you know what I mean. There's a famous photo where a photojournalist has taken a photo of a vulture with a baby who's like a malnourished baby. It's fucked up. But it showcases something that's really important, and I couldn't do that. So I had an incident where I'd been at this thing called Gourmet Escape, which is a food and wine festival for, really affluent people who are experiencing it. And I was there with the wine and food writer and having a great old time taking photos. And we got this call saying there's been a shark attack, and we just happened to be about 5 minutes up the road from this surfing spot. And so we attended it, and we were there before a lot of people got there. And the police and ambulance were there, but the helicopter was down on the beach because it was like a remote surfing spot. So it wasn't somewhere where you could get straight to. It was about 1 kilometre down the beach. And we were there before a lot of people were there. And I'd been practicing my spot news. So I was like, okay, Becky, this is it. Where you can't. So spot news is things that happen that are actually newsworthy. A lot of the time in local papers, you're taking photos of people who've won awards or advertising for something that's coming. And spot news are like car crashes and, people who've had experiences, and it's pretty traumatic events, really. But in this particular time, we were there. I was there by myself. The other writer had stayed at the event, and this woman just shot past me, and I thought, this is important. Come on, Becky, you've got to take photos of this. And I had my camera up, and she walked up to the police and the ambulance, and I couldn't hear what they were, but I had my camera on her so I could see her face. And it brings me shivers and tears right now, but it was the guy who just lost his life. It was his partner finding out that he'd just died.
Oh my God.
And it was the most horrendous moment and pivotal moment for myself as a photographer, because she let out this almighty screech, and she nearly rolled down she fell down. And I was taking photos of her while she was experiencing this. All I wanted to do was go up and hug her and hold her and tell her that it's not going to be okay and it's shit. But I was taking photos of her, and I felt so disjointed from my body, and I felt so it just felt so wrong. And it was in that moment that I started to disconnect from photography, and that I realized that it wasn't necessarily for me. And I went to America. I did camp. I left that job like not long after that had happened, because the photos didn't end up anywhere. They didn't go on the paper. They didn't win any awards. They didn't see the light of day. So I'd taken them for nothing. I'd been in this situation, and I realized I believe in something much bigger than me. I don't know what it is. I don't know what its name is, but there's been things that have happened in life where I do believe in. This was for me. This discomfort and this horrible moment was for me to realize that maybe that wasn't what I was supposed to be doing. And so I left that job. I went to America, did Camp America. We were there for 3 months, and I was just shooting, taking photos and photos and photos. And then when I got back to Australia, I did not touch my camera. I had like a trauma response to it. I couldn't take photos. If my friends asked me to take photos, I couldn't. I didn't want to. And then when I got back from America, I became a personal trainer. And that was just, I was like, I want to help people. I want to help people. And then so I became a personal trainer just randomly, came back. And I always go, how you go through this like dark night of the soul of like, what am I doing with my life? Like, like you were saying with the podcast, you need that outlet for creativity. I was like, something's calling me, and it certainly ain't photography. So I became a personal trainer and did that for 6-7 years. That took me up onto the mine sites. And while experiencing that as well, I had another few moments similar to the shark attack, similar in the way that I felt out of body experience, where I thought I was going to help people, but actually I was putting people on 1,200 calorie diets and making them train so freaking hard that their adrenals were shot. And I was aiding diet culture and wanting them to be skinny, and health wasn't at the forefront of my mind. And so that's why I went down the path of being kind to yourself and doing the events Quit Your Bitching, which was understanding diet culture and body image, and about BMI, and how the beauty industry, and how we've all been brought up that we have to be perfect and have perfect skin and skinny bodies, or if we're in a smaller body, we have to have hips and boobs, and men have to have the broad shoulders and the six-pack, and if you're not that, then you're broken. So that's what led me down that path of having conversations about taboo topics. And here we are.
Here we are. Man, Becky, you're so interesting. you need to meet.
Hey.
You need to meet my Becky, by the way. You guys have a lot in common. You'd love her.
I bet when you said, because your name, for context, anybody who's listening, Ben's name came up as Becky Stone on the Zoom, and I was like, your name's mixed with my name. And he was like, no, that's my partner or my wife. And I was like, oh, yeah, good name. She sounds amazing.
So far, based on what you know, her name's Becky. She's awesome.
So far. She sounds great. Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool. I think we really got a kind of a full circle walkthrough there by accident about your whole backstory there. So what are you doing today? It's like 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock there now. You have breakfast? What's going on?
Yeah, I had breakfast before. I'm one of those people who I've got to eat. Like, eating's my favorite, so I want to make sure that I'm nourishing myself. So I got up and ate before. I'm going to go to the gym today, get my shit together. Something else that I've had to do when it comes to business and success within myself is planning my week coming. Sunday is like do my washing. But also something that I've made sure that I've been doing that I didn't do last year in the back end of COVID was joy and fun and being with friends and family. And I really isolated myself last year, not and I think we all kind of went through something after COVID because we'd all been told to isolate. I personally forgot how to actually interact with humans. So I started getting like social anxiety. Did you get that?
Hard to say. I kind of had it already.
Yeah, okay. Well, I feel like half the world, if not all the world, kind of experience like, how do I go out now? So yeah, tonight I've been I love dance hall and Afro beats and music and dancing, and there's a thing on tonight where I can never find people to go with, so I'm like, do I go by myself? There's something on tonight where I want to go. There's a live artist who's come from America actually, and so I might go to that, but also might not. Just trusting and listening to myself if my body needs some sleep. But yeah, prepping for the week, and I might go to the beach because it's a bit cold over there. Is it right now, or is it semi-warm?
Where I'm at, it's chilly. It's probably about 45 or 50. I mean,
what's that? What's 45, 50 in?
What are you dealing in here? Celsius?
Yeah. So here it is now probably about 30 degrees or 20. Yeah. So what are you doing? What are your?
Yeah, we're Fahrenheit.
Fahrenheit. What is it?
We'll say 50.
Okay, I can't convert. Wait, let me figure this out. I'll have to message you. But yeah, it's cold for you and it's warm, and I might go to the beach. So I'll go to the beach for everyone, for you guys, okay?
That's fine. I like the cold.
That works out.
All right.
We can handle that.
Yeah. Well, man, I think we covered some good stuff here today. I'm so happy to have met you. You're a great person. You're very cool.
Thank you. I appreciate you. And I'm excited for you. Like, if this is the third one, all the people that you're going to meet, and if you want, I can definitely send some people your way. I think.
Oh, heck yeah.
It's the best way to learn. Like, it's the best way to, it's like you're going traveling around the world, is meeting everybody all over the place and hearing their experiences. So thanks for sharing yours. Thanks for being a great human.
Hey, thank you for saying that, and to you as well. I'm looking forward to our new budding friendship. That'll be fun.
Yes, try to see meets and then be like, what's Becky doing?
Here at Custom Hat Pins, we make more than just enamel pins. We are your full service provider for every custom promotional product you could ever need. Pins are one of the most affordable and effective ways to get your customers to promote your business. They are a unique addition to apparel, and that will always catch the attention of your potential customers. Whether you want to get the word out about your brand or add to your personal style, we can provide you with competitive bulk quotes for over 10,000 different products. Not sure which pin suits your design? Our Pins 101 page will show you exactly how pins are made and the difference between each type. An educated customer is a satisfied customer. Still have questions? Fill out the form on our Contact Us page and a member of our friendly sales team will quickly respond.